All right, guys, so picking up again with Sword and Buckler, again going off of MS-133. Do a quick review before we dive into some of the deeper things because these are building on each other. But Sword and Buckler especially is very difficult to do alone, and really wanted to make sure we highlight some of those important things we've talked about before. So first thing is going to be stance and posture. So again, we're keeping our legs fairly well under our hips, under our waist, and we're going to really hinge at the hips to lean forward from here. If that shifts you back a little bit, that's totally fine, but we're looking for this kind of extension where I have a lot of space in front underneath myself, as opposed to standing here where my leg is directly under, which puts it in range, makes the target. Working from this position with a one-handed weapon, whichever foot forward doesn't really matter. There's not a whole lot to be done to worry about here. A lot of our action coming from the hips and the shoulders, but it's not enough to pull us through with a step the same way a longsword or two-handed weapon would. Other things we've talked about is placing in distance, right? So if I can strike my target from here, if I step away, this distance I'm going to siege at, which means back here is where I'm in my ward, or farther back is where I start to enter the fight and start to play with engaging my opponent. So really getting used to this idea of this 2 steps away, 1 step to siege, next step to drive through to attack. The other thing that's really important to review every time you start playing with this system and working through things is getting used to the idea that this is not a static position. As you siege into half shields or some other sieges we'll talk about today, you should be constantly moving through, constantly driving forward to your target. So you start in whichever ward you'd like, whichever foot forward you'd like, it really doesn't matter. Driving in, immediately coming out. You start from somewhere else, same thing. Driving in, immediately moving through, moving into my attack. That is some of the most important fundamentals of 133, and is really what's going to help this system make sense in a holistic perspective. You can pick individual plays out and try to study them, but until you have these underlying actions, underlying motions, they're really not going to apply. So building off into there, we talked a little about half shield last time. So coming out this position here, we're going to go into a couple other sieges, some specialized sieges, sieging second, sieging third. So quick review, second ward is from your, assuming you're right-handed, your right shoulder, press here like so. If you want to be annoying, you can start using that buckler to close this line off, making it a little bit more difficult for your opponent to work from, giving yourself some options to move as you drive through or attack. So to siege second, we first need to really think about second ward, what it means, what it does. Obviously, I'm queued up for this strike, right? I can do some other things. I might be able to throw something from my left side. Again, that's why we keep this outside our arm, so I can throw that left side strike without worrying about my head getting in the way and having to duck or angle. From here, it's very easy. You can just kind of throw this without worrying too much. You're not throwing anything rising. This is kind of weird, kind of awkward. There is one kind of, I think it was a bonus attack, bonus motion, which is this kind of drop thrust, where instead of throwing an extended cut, I bring the sword point forward and let it follow back out. What this looks like from the side and why this is effective is I'm not pulling this back and queuing up. Now I'm in 6th position, right? I'm letting this travel forward and moving out. So the entire time I'm doing this, the center of mass of the weapon is always advancing. I'm always throwing this forward. But instead of making this arc for a cut, I'm letting it drive fairly straight as it comes through. So those are the main attacks, main things we're going to deal with against someone in second ward. So again, if the opponent, the camera is in second, this strike is probably coming across this way, and that's the angle of attack I have to deal with, have to respond to as I siege. So if I were to siege into half shield, nice and easy, right? I'm here, the attack's coming into my left side, I just turn, catch it, press it down, and I get to follow through and do other attacks. There's a special siege of second, which I just kind of think of as siege of second. It's called a Schutzen, but they call lots of things Schutzens as kind of a covered position, and just qualifying it as siege of second makes things a lot easier, make more sense to explain to teach going forward. So as we're coming in, I'm going to raise up high with my sword. I'm kind of pressing this out slightly forward. It's not back. I want tip forward, leading this out. So it almost looks like I'm making a cut and ready to pull this down and come through. We see a lot of our longsword cuts looking like this mechanic where we're here, throw up, pull down. But I'm coming up to this matching position, and my buckler is going to face away under my arm from here. And this, at first blush, seems really counterintuitive. I'm creating a giant opening over here, and I'm really inviting my opponent to attack and putting myself on this defensive position, in this position where I need to react to their cut. And it seems counterintuitive to everything we know and understand about general fighting as a whole, right? So lots of fighting rules are saying, keep attacking, put them on the defense, and keep striking to the openings, and eventually make it through. So as I'm coming up here, I'm saying, look, here's my big opening. I'm inviting you to hit it. And yes, we're just basically baiting them into attacking this opening or doing something. So as I would come up here, I'm fairly certain this attack is going to come straight forward. So all I'm going to be doing is, as I come through, I'm dropping this down, coming across with my edge over the top of their sword. And I'm giving myself a much stronger bind position, a much better edge alignment as I come across, intercept their cut, pressing it down. So again, I'd come up, expecting to attack, so I'm immediately dropping my buckler low, letting my sword drop across through here as I drive through and follow that motion. So from the side, and again, checking our distance here. So here's my range, here's my siege, here's where I'm starting. Remember, I can start wherever I want. I can start lazy, not in anything, because I'm far enough away that it doesn't matter. If I start in a ward, I can go anywhere and get to that position comfortably as I move. So as I come into siege, coming up here, I'm immediately going to drop that buckler, bring my sword down, picking up whatever attack is coming across. From there, I can control and strike and move through as I need to. So again, I start in whatever ward makes me happiest. I drive into my siege a second, immediately drop, bring everything down, and striking through. Some more time towards the front, then we'll talk about this a little bit more, how it works, what it means, why we're doing it. So again, start in whatever ward I'd like, step in, up and away, notice sword is pointed tip forward, buckler's under that arm, pressing away from myself, and I drop this across and bring through here. And this gives me a lot of control. So why does this work? What am I doing? There is a little bit of fun physics getting to this, talking about getting the overbind and edge on flat, because if we're getting a cut along this axis, right, this is the plane of the cut, my sword is coming in over the top of it and getting my edge on the flat, which is really going to deflect it, push it away much more strongly and much more efficiently than if I were to cut into the bind normally. So even from here, it's not just a normal drop cut. I'm not even thinking about a cut. I'm thinking about just dropping and pressing this down and kind of overwrapping the edge of their sword. As far as tempo and timing goes, if I'm starting this 2 steps away, I have so much time to make this hand drop because they're still a step away from hitting me, right? If I'm in good stance, good position, there I'm a step away. Best case, they're matching my position and they're a step away from hitting me. Or sorry, worst case, they're a step away from hitting me. Best case, I can kind of step, hit that leg. If they're not controlling themselves, I don't even have to reach and try for that deeper target. So again, really focusing on stance, form, structure here. So I step up, invite the attack, and immediately close off whatever line that is, driving and moving through. Worth mentioning, at least highlighting, if the opponent doesn't act, doesn't move from second, as I step up, all I do, I still drop that buckler low, and I start to bring this tip down. If there's no action, instead of dropping this cut, I just drop this thrust in to the head behind this buckler, wherever it needs to go. And again, I'm using this buckler to help suppress control their attack line as I move through. So just coming up, drop the buckler, pressing through. So last thing I want to talk about with this siege is kind of this weird buckler flourish, buckler sweep type motion. I really like using it this way as kind of this pairing idea, because as I'm here, obviously I can't just kind of lock all this because my hands and arms get tied up together. Using this as a sweep to kind of clear that low path, that really helps deal with this type of thrust. If they're not throwing an extended cut and they're being proper and holding their ground and not stepping forward, this thrust is really difficult to get out of the way with this sword. The timing is awkward. They come in fast, you may be slow. You come in, they come in slow, you may miss it from that side. So using this buckler to sweep, cover, sweep again is really helping make a lot of space closed up, closing lines off from that kind of weird little drop thrust here. So again, I come up, buckler away, sweep it across, drop this down, come back, and strike through. Real quick, I want to start touching on Siege of Third because it's a very similar setup, very similar motion starting point with just a few variations to make this a really easy tack on at the end of this lesson. So again, third ward is on this opposite shoulder. And the weakness of third is I really can't, this looks like a really easy strike to make, but I can't keep my arm protected, keep my arm safe. So it's really a shortened, weakened position unless I'm going to really drive through, coming around, and things like that. And then even then, I'm working off from my opposite shoulder. And it's just a really awkward, uncomfortable position to work from, which is why first ward is much more effective, much more useful. I can keep my hand and arm safe no matter what kind of cut I want to throw. From third, I'm really limited by my ability to keep this lead hand safe. So unless I'm really turning and driving my hand and basically shortening the length of my attack or forcing myself to drive through after it, you don't have a lot of positions to work from here. Obviously, you can do things like this, but you can do this just as easily, if not better, from second. So third doesn't give you that advantage either. The counter, the Siege of Third is very similar to Siege of Second, where second, I want my sword pointed up, stretching across here. Siege of Third, I just drop it down. Otherwise, the same exact play, same exact press through that we just had before. But this time, instead of making an opening, baiting this opening, I'm completely shutting down that weak side attack that's going to be coming in if they try to throw anything at all. So Siege of Second, strike is coming from my left side across this way. I bait the attack, bait the opening, press it out of the way, catch it, drive it down and through. Siege of Third ward, they're coming in with this side. Now I'm just going to get everything up and high and take away any attack they have. So working from this high position, if they strike low or try to come below or make anything, it's really easy to just drive down, control, and land on top of that strike and pressing it down. Because again, all of our attacks, all our motions are finishing in that final ward, that seventh ward, right? So we're down here, like so. We want to finish in this low, strong position with the overbind, controlling their weapon, ideally being able to use our buckler to control their buckler and weapon shortly thereafter. So sieging second, I come up, I sweep this, drop this down. As I step forward, my momentum, I wind up in seventh, do whatever I need to do. Sieging third, I drive up from here. If there's a cut, I can now press it out, drive it down here. And again, I'm winding up in that same style of position. I'm slightly, quote, backward because I don't want to invert my sword under their weapon. I want to stay on top, control over here. This is just as good, just as effective, just as useful as being in this position. Just being able to rotate and come through as long as you keep that overbind. So that's going to be it for tonight, guys. So I hope that was good, hope that was useful. Kind of looking into some specialty sieges, Siege of Second, Siege of Third, and seeing that everything starts looking really similar, right? It doesn't matter if they're in second, I can siege in with half shield, drive down to seventh. I can just siege in with that Siege of Second here. Same thing, driving down, finishing in seventh. when you really start looking at 133 as a system, you have a huge set of combinations of where things start, but everything starts coming back down, narrowing these trees to this 7th ward position. And there's variables which are hard to demonstrate alone. You can be overbind on the left, overbind on the right. You can be underbound, but they're stored on top of yours. And those 4 positions pretty much dictate all possible midpoints of an engagement, right? So we start wide, we narrow down to the 7th ward, above, below, left and right, and working off of there. But that is a lot of, this system can be simplified down to that real dynamic exchange. No matter how wide out we start, everything funnels down to this position. And once you're here, if you're on top, if you're below, if you're left, or if you're right, then you have a whole bunch of options branching back out, and you can kind of choose and react to the situation with whichever technique is applicable in that instance. So again, reviewing, starting to see how this system really funnels down to an end position. Have probably some more examples of that next time, it'll be next Monday now. And then we can start trying to demonstrate follow-throughs, what happens after we get here. So again, if there's any questions, feel free, email me, comment below, all that social media garbage that I don't do very well. But really just feel free to reach out and ask. I'm more than happy to talk about this stuff or anything like this. So until then, I'll see everyone on Wednesday for some more single sword stuff.